Ever since we started launching things into space, we've all known that basic rule of physics, right? What goes up must come down. But these days, with our skies getting more and more crowded, that old saying, well, it's starting to sound less like a simple fact and more like a serious warning.
So let me ask you something. What would you do if a rocket, or a big piece of one, just fell out of the sky and landed in your backyard? It sounds like a crazy hypothetical question, something you'd see in a sci-fi movie. But for some people, it's not a hypothetical at all. It's very, very real.
I mean, just look at this scene in China. After a recent launch, a rocket booster did its job, separated, and then came plummeting right back down to Earth, crashing straight through someone's house. Not only was the home just obliterated, but that thick, yellow smoke you're seeing, that is an extremely toxic gas. And what's maybe the most shocking part of all is that for people in certain parts of the country, this is actually a relatively common thing to see.
Okay, so that story is pretty wild, right? But it's really just one piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. It makes you stop and ask, just how much junk is actually floating around up there above our heads?
The number is, well, it's kind of staggering. Right now, the Global Space Surveillance Network is actively tracking over 27,000 pieces of space debris. And get this, that's just the stuff they can see, the objects that are bigger than a baseball. And when we say space junk, it covers a whole range of things you might not expect. Sure, you've got your old dead satellites and those giant discarded rocket stages. But we're also talking about tiny flecks of paint traveling at incredible speeds, tools that have literally slipped out of an astronaut's hands, and even, yes, frozen astronaut urine from the early days of the space race. Now, most of that small stuff just burns up when it re-enters the atmosphere, but it's those really big pieces we need to worry about. So what actually happens when one of those bigger chunks finally comes home? Well, the consequences can be wildly unpredictable. Let's dive into 3 very different and very true stories of what happens when stuff falls from space. Back in 1978, we had what is still the most dangerous incident on record. A 4-ton nuclear-powered Soviet satellite carrying 50 kilograms of enriched uranium came crashing down over northern Canada. Some of the pieces were so radioactive they could kill a person within a few hours. This kicked off something called Operation Morning Light, this massive months-long search and cleanup mission in the brutal -40-degree tundra. The final price tag was $6 million, and Canada promptly sent the bill over to the Soviets who, well, they eventually paid about half of it.
And the range of what can happen here is just bizarre. On one hand, you have a literal radioactive nightmare and a huge international incident. And on the other, a SpaceX rocket part crashes into the ocean in 2015, washes up in the Bahamas, and gets found by some tourists on vacation. They hit up Elon Musk on Twitter, and SpaceX actually got their GoPro footage back from it. It's crazy, the difference between a lethal threat and a tourist's treasure.
But you gotta be wondering, has anyone ever actually been hit by this stuff? Incredibly, the answer is yes, once. In 1997, a woman in Oklahoma was out for a walk and saw these bright streaks lighting up the sky. About a half hour later, she felt this little tap on her shoulder. It was a small, lightweight piece of metal from the exact same Delta II rocket she'd just watched burn up. She was so lucky because it was so light, it was falling very slowly, and she was completely fine.
These stories bring up a really fascinating legal question. Just a few months ago, this enormous chunk of a SpaceX Dragon capsule was found sticking straight out of the ground on a farm in Australia. So, who owns it? The farmer or SpaceX?
The answer actually comes from a super important piece of international law, the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. It lays down a simple but absolutely critical rule. If you launch something into space, it is yours forever. That means you own it, and you are responsible for it, no matter where on planet Earth it ends up. So let's break that down. In the case of that Australian farmer, if SpaceX wants its Dragon capsule part back, it legally belongs to them, and it's their job to come get it. But if a company decides, we don't want it back, then it's basically finders keepers. The farmer could legally keep that thing or even sell it online, and if nobody claims it at all, then the local government has to clean it up, and they send the bill to whoever launched it in the first place.
Okay, so we've looked at some crazy stories from the past, but the real issue here is the future. Because this isn't a problem that's going away, it's getting bigger, and the odds of another incident are getting shorter every single day.
And the reason why this is so urgent is simple. We are in a new space race.
The number of rocket launches happening every year has shot up to an all-time high. And even more dramatic is the growth in satellites orbiting the Earth. That's gone completely exponential. We're launching more stuff faster than ever before in human history.
So, what does all this new traffic up there mean for us down here on the ground? Well, scientists have actually calculated the odds, and their conclusion is pretty sobering. They estimate there is now a 10% chance, a 1 in 10 chance, that a falling piece of a rocket will cause a human casualty sometime in the next decade. What used to be a 1 in a trillion event is becoming a real, measurable risk.
And it leaves us with this one critical question. The law might say the company that launches something is liable. But as we fill the skies with tens of thousands of new objects in this new era of space exploration, we really have to ask, who is truly responsible for the inevitable rain that's going to follow?